All right, greetings everyone. We are live again, Dynasty Mirror Search for Uhuru. Thank you all. Thank you so much for joining us on this Wednesday evening here in Atlanta. Guys, before we get started, make sure you hit that like button. Again, please hit that like button. Also, please share the content. Again, please share the content and then subscribe. If you're not a subscriber, right, it does not cost you anything to subscribe. So subscribe. And then you got the Cash App, you got the Patreon, support Black media. Again, hit that Cash App, hit that super chat, and go ahead and support Black media. Also, please visit oneafricaproperties.com, oneafricaproperties.com, your central source for real estate on the continent of Africa. Without further ado, we have brother Ebube Okoli. This is your home. This is your second home.
It's good to be here.
Yeah, this is your home. And so we're going to be discussing, and Brother Ebube is a lawyer. As you all know, Bill Cosby was free today. I know some people feel a certain way about that. And then yesterday, Nnamdi Kanu got extradited. I don't know from where. And he's in a Nigerian prison right now. So, Ebube, go ahead and introduce yourself and we'll get started.
My name is Ebube Okoli. I'm a Nigerian-born, American-trained attorney and geopolitical analyst. I'm also the host of Up Close and Center. If you haven't been to Up Close and Center, go ahead and go there after this broadcast and subscribe. It's wholly owned independent media focusing on geopolitical analysis of the African continent. So if you haven't been already over there to subscribe, make sure you subscribe. Also, too, while you're watching this broadcast, make sure you hit the like button and subscribe here as well. All right, so now you brought up two court cases, essentially.
It's been an interesting week. Nnamdi Kanu.
It's only Wednesday.
But it's only Wednesday. And then Rumsfeld passed away.
Donald Rumsfeld, yeah. At 88 years old.
It's been an interesting week, half a week, hump day.
It's only been 3 days into it so far. A lot is going on. So let's hope for some more positive news moving forward for the rest of the week. All positive is what we're actually hoping.
All positive. So let's start with Nnamdi Kanu. Now, I think this was expected, if you ask me. I think he's kind of been targeted for a minute now by the Nigerian police. I think they've been wanting to get him for a while now. So when they got when they arrested Sowore, a couple years ago, and I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, Ebube, correct me if I'm wrong, I don't want to put out any misinformation. I think one of the reasons why they arrested Sowore is because they accused him of plotting with Nnamdi Kanu. Am I right or wrong? I know he had a big meeting with him in New York, and that kind of.
There's a lot of speculation around why, but I believe it was more so around the revolution now.
Right.
This particular administration views those type of disturbances as attempts to remove the government from office.
Right.
So they treat it very seriously. So certain administrations they allow protests in certain manners. In certain manners they don't. So I believe it was in more connection with his revolution now, I believe.
Okay.
He has his hands in a lot of things, and so I believe the DSS detained him, and I think he's actually still fighting charges now as we speak.
Right.
In regards to Nnamdi Kanu, to be perfectly honest, there are actually more questions than there are answers.
Okay.
He kind of disappeared for a while, and then the next thing we hear the Minister of Justice giving a press briefing with police and various security agencies stating that he was in court. And then we see pictures of someone with what appears to be a black hood or something over their face and a black jumpsuit. And then we also see pictures of him wearing a white, I believe it was Fendi tracksuit, which seemed photoshopped. When I initially saw the Fendi tracksuit, I could tell it looked like a Photoshop. The head was large, so I kind of disregarded it. And then later, his attorney came out and stated that he was actually in DSS custody. So with that, what we're looking at is this is a very interesting situation that the federal government finds themselves in, because Nnamdi Kanu has a lot of supporters. And we have to understand that he came back to stand trial. I believe he was arrested in 2015. And after being arrested in 2015, he was granted bail in 2017. And it seems to be an echo. Is that me?
Let me turn this down. It's probably on my end. I just put my Bluetooth speaker on. I'll go ahead.
All right. So then soldiers came to his house, and allegedly the number varies, but certain number of people were killed, and it was alleged that they'd come to actually kill him or apprehend him or something while he was out on bail. So he disappears for maybe several months, a year and a half, and then he pops up in Israel. And then he carries on in the manner that he was proceeding prior. So the whole thing is just interesting. And then now he just pops up and he's in Nigerian custody. There are reports saying that he wasn't taken from the UK. So there are more questions than answers. So, for example, which country did he come from? Will we ever know? How was he brought in? Was he brought in similar to Umaru Diko, or did he come in voluntarily? And did he want to be arrested? There's just so many questions. But the only thing that we're really looking at is that it's a very sensitive situation because this man has very loyal followers. And everybody's looking and saying, okay, he's come back to stand trial. Is he going to get a fair trial? Because there's something called the procedure and the
substance. But let me ask you this. Sorry to cut you off. What is he standing trial for? Like, what is he accused of?
I believe there was originally 11 charges verging on treason and things around that ambit. So I believe there were originally 11 charges, but I wholeheartedly believe that they're going to bring more charges, probably potentially 10, 15 more. They've made it their focus to go after Nnamdi Kanu. So who knows what they're going to bring. I believe the 26th of next month is when the actual trial will resume under Justice Judge Binta Nyako in Abuja. So we have to look at the procedure and everything. There's the substance and the procedure. And this is like a lawyer term, but I'll briefly explain it. Okay. Now, there's something called the game and the sport. The game is the procedure. The sport is the substance. So, for example, something that's a game would be chess. Chess is a game. So, for example, in New York, if you go on the subway, you might see two old men, and they both have their eyes closed, and they're mumbling things like rook A4, pawn B6, etc., etc. And if you watch them long enough, you'll realize, wait a minute, these men are playing chess without the chessboard, because chess is completely procedural. How you move the pieces is of no consequence. What the pieces are made out of is of no consequences. How large the pieces are is of no consequences. How swiftly you move them from one square to another is of no consequence, because chess is a procedural game. It's all procedure. So now, when something is all procedure, it's supposed to happen the same way every time, regardless of who's actually involved. So now the sport is substantive. So now, Dinas, you played football. You know, when you're doing a sweep right, sweep left, or you're running through the A gap,
right?
Who's running the ball makes a big difference.
Right.
Who's blocking for you? Who's on the other side? How swift the middle linebacker is? All those things affect. But if you draw it up in the classroom on the chalkboard, every play goes for 50 yards every single time.
Right. It looks great.
You get out there and you realize you're lucky to get 4.5 yards. That's a good run.
Right.
So that's the sport, and that's the substance. So, for example, the procedure or the game is supposed to be the same regardless. So the process is supposed to be the same regardless of color, race, gender, religion, anything. You're supposed to get the same process. Now, the substance of the case is, if you're defending somebody who's on videotape committing the crime, that's going to be a harder substantive case than if you have somebody who has 6 alibis and they were 4 states away at the time of the crime. That's substantively going to be an easier case. So now we see the game and the sport, procedure and substance. But everybody's looking at this case is they're saying, okay, is he going to get a fair trial, because he's now in the country to stand trial? So now if he's in the country to stand trial, is he going to get a fair trial? Because with anything where there's a process, if the process is flawed, people don't accept the results. So, for example, there's a way someone's supposed to make a sandwich for you. If you see someone use the restroom and they don't wash their hands and they make a sandwich using those very same hands, you're not going to accept the sandwich because the process in which it was made you eating that null and void.
All right.
So if the process of something is flawed, then the people won't accept the end results. So now what people are looking at is saying, okay, if this trial isn't fair, or as people perceive it to be, if this isn't fair, then there's going to be additional problems, because if he gets jail time, people are going to say, well, that wasn't just, and they're not going to accept those results. It's like having a flawed election.
Right, so, guys, hit that like. Oh, go ahead.
Oh, no, yeah. So y'all hit that like button. So with the Nnamdi Kanu, what we're looking at is the actual process. Now, that's important to remember for Bill Cosby, because essentially Bill Cosby, and this was something when I initially saw this case. I didn't really follow the case in the media. He should have never been. The process was so. I was surprised that he got that verdict, because the process, it appeared to be flawed, and I believe that's what the Supreme Court looked at and said this. His main problem was, this is the age where you can be tried in the media and on social media to the point where everybody just assumes you're guilty because, hey, it's just in the media that you're guilty. But when you go into a courtroom, you actually have to prove. You have to prove. It's not what the media. You can be tried in the media, but then in the courtroom, when the facts come out, you say, wait, this is what the media has been going on and on and on about. This doesn't really make sense. And so that's essentially what they looked at. They said this process was flawed. The process is supposed to be the same, whether or not you believe somebody is guilty or innocent. The process is supposed to be the same. And so they said that the process was so flawed that the verdict just couldn't stand. So, that's Bill Cosby, and in a way that ties into Nnamdi Kanu, because now people are saying that the process has to be one that the people in general can accept. And that touches on a very interesting point, because at the end of the day, you have to remember that a well-articulated ideology can never be killed. A well-articulated ideology can never be killed. You can't just go and take guns and say, well, anybody who believes that. So, for example, the ideology of Biafra. You had, I think, 12 to 15 tribes came together in the former Eastern region and said, hey, we're going to just push for self-determination. Right. We're just going to push for autonomy. We feel that we could manage our events and our system better without being attached to all these other tribes. So these 12, 15 tribes came together and said, look, we're going to go ahead and leave the other tribes and allow everybody to manage themselves. Now, that idea that this group of people in this corner of the country is better off by themselves, that's an idea that you can't kill with guns. The only way to kill or diminish an idea is to come with a counter idea that's well articulated and contains enough logic where the person looking at it can see it and say, well, okay, well, actually, it does make sense to be part of the larger confederation and be in a nation with all these other groups instead of just being with these 12 tribes in my backyard.
Guys, hit that like button. So you have a statement in the chat room, but Nnamdi Kanu is Nigerian. He's Nigerian born, right?
Yeah, I believe he was born in Abia State.
Yeah, I guess the argument is he's a UK citizen. How can they extradite him? He's Nigerian.
I don't believe that they actually extradited him though, because
they said he was in Kenya. Somebody in the chat room was saying that he was in Kenya.
Some people are saying Ethiopia. Some people are saying South America. Some people are saying he came in voluntarily. And that's what I noted earlier, is that there's just so many questions and not enough answers. But Dennis, 1 second, let me grab some water.
Oh, no problem, guys. Thank you so much for joining, everyone. After Wahala, we got to continue our conversation, man. So here in about 15 minutes, I'm gonna put the link in the chat room. Click on that link, and you're more than welcome to come in and join the convo. Again, you're more than welcome to join the convo. Yes, Bill Cosby's free. Bill Cosby is free, y'all. He should have never been arrested anyway. I mean, he should have never been in prison anyway, But, unfortunately he was, but he was vindicated. And now he's a free man. He's home. So he was arrested with the collaboration of the Kenyan authorities. Okay, so he was in Kenya. So my thing is, if you're a fugitive, when it Ebube, here's my question, right?
Right.
Now, technically, Nnamdi Kanu was a fugitive, right?
Well, it depends. It depends. I believe his movement, the Indigenous People of Biafra, was labeled as a terrorist organization by the Nigerian government.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't really think that other nations really adhered to that because he was in the UK for several years, and if the UK typically doesn't harbor terrorists.
Mm-hmm.
So it depends on how you classify fugitive. Now, you have to remember that his argument, and this is what his attorney's argument was that he was on bail,
Mm-hmm.
and a bunch of armed men, allegedly soldiers, came to his house and killed a bunch of people and intended to kill him as well. So he left. So his argument isn't that I jumped bail. His argument is that I was in my house and people came to kill me. I'm not safe there.
Right.
So it all depends. Pardon me?
I said we'll see how that plays out in court.
We'll see how that plays out. It's gonna be a very interesting one. But hopefully procedurally, I hope that he's given a fair trial. We'll see July 26th when Justice Nyako reconvenes trials, when they start trials again.
How long do you think the trial's gonna last, roughly?
Who knows? Like this is a situation that it hasn't been seen before at this magnitude. This is really a first time that something like this has happened.
In the chat room, the Igbos failed. Now, see, I don't want to make this a Biafra discussion, but when you're dealing with Nnamdi Kanu, it's kind of
that's a side issue. But
yeah. In the chat room, someone's saying that the Igbos failed to ease the concerns of the South. The Igbos guarantee the South that 50% of oil profits, then they may support Biafra. What's your
I don't know what that person's talking about. I have to get more context, but basically, what Biafra was, it was a response to many stimuli. Essentially, before, what happened is that Igbo people were being targeted in Nigeria. 30 to 60,000 Igbo people were killed, and so it became a point where it was, hey, we're not safe in this country. And certain agreements weren't upheld. And you have to remember, Biafra wasn't just Igbo people. There was about 15 tribes that came together, the Eastern tribes. People make Biafra synonymous with Igbos, and that's just not the case. The name Igbo, in fact, Biafra is not an Igbo word. It was, I believe, an Ijaw or an Ogoni person came up with it. It was the name of the area prior to colonialization,
right?
A historic, ancient name. So it wasn't even an Igbo name. It was a name from Ijaw people. So sometimes people, and we don't typically understand history in the proper context in Nigeria. So many people misunderstand it. But Biafra wasn't an all Igbo affair. It was 15, 20. There's a lot of groups depending on how you count the groups. But these groups came together and told the military governor at the time, who was Ojukwu, that, hey, if we don't get this, this, and this, we're pushing for self-determination, and we're just going to run our affairs by ourselves without the interference of the other tribes. Mm-hmm. And because what was the original treaties made in Abore didn't prevent the war, everybody didn't get what they wanted. So Gowon announced that they were moving away from regions to states. Those in the East felt that this was in contrast, direct contradiction to what was agreed. That's still murky as to what exactly was agreed, because we have two different people with two different stories. What the actual agreement was, we'll never fully know, as a lot of these actors have passed away, so we can only speculate. And so after the agreements weren't fulfilled in the way that both sides perceived that they should have been, it led to a war against this group saying we want to be on our own, and this group saying that everybody has to stay together. So it's an ideological fight. One group saying, hey, everybody should have the right to self-determination, another group saying, we're not going to break this nation. And they couldn't resolve it politically. So if the political discussions break down, typically wars or armed conflicts ensue.
Let's see here. Ebube, remember that Nnamdi Kanu's movement and members have killed civilians, policemen, and soldiers. He's guilty. What are your thoughts on?
Well, I mean, if whoever made that comment is the judge, then I guess that's the trial right there. So I mean, what are we going to say? You know, but I don't have any evidence of him doing that. I haven't. I believe his movement's called the Indigenous People of Biafra, IPOB, and I'm pretty sure they're a nonviolent movement. But hey, that may come out at trial. It may not. Who knows? We'll see when we get.
Okay. All right. Now, shout out to Pan Africanism Strikes Back. Thank you for the super chat. It was like a Miranda right violation. The prosecutor promised him he would not be charged, and Cosby incriminated himself, and they charged him. Let me ask you this. So I've been listening to some of the commentary on Cosby being released. So you have the alleged, again, I say alleged victims who are saying it's wrong.
Just one victim. I think it was Andrea Constance. She said that.
Right, but see what they did. They brought all these other women. That was just the media. See what happened is this. There was essentially two trials. There was one where if you said, "Hey, Bill Cosby did this," you'd go on a major platform, you'd tell your story, and everybody would tune in and say, "Man." It's almost like with the Finding Neverland thing, right? So now that'd be one person. And another person would come in and say, well, Bill Cosby did this to me too. And you'd be like, man, another one? And then another one and another one and another. And they were all on TV, but they weren't really in the courtroom. The case in the courtroom revolved around Andrea Constance, I believe, and she came in. Right.
She went to his house, but her story it kind of contradicted herself. I believe she said that she drove to his house, and then she said on another time that they went to dinner, and then she went to his house, and there were some contradictions in her story, and it was just a really interesting case. But they ultimately determined that he wasn't what they said he was, and so the question now is the damage to his reputation, the time that he's lost. You can't get that back in someone of his age. Right. At that point, every single year is precious because those are how many more years do you have left?
Right. So it like you said, he's been absolved, right? He's been thrown out. He's been exonerated, vindicated, but they keep bringing up the alleged victims and their story, and they're trying to use that to say he should have still been locked. He should still be locked up, even though he had this agreement. You
have to go to court in order to lock somebody. I can't. Dynasty Mayor, imagine if somebody gets on YouTube and just starts saying bad things about you and saying that you're this and you're that, right? You can't get locked up or punished off of that. That's just somebody on TV saying something about you. You have to go to court. Take it to court where there's actually going to be crosses, directs, where you're going to have to speak to a jury, where we're really going to examine your story from top to bottom and not just give you the benefit of the doubt. So that's the thing. They didn't really go to court. You have to go to court for somebody to be proven guilty.
Right. But you got to think, let's look at the fallout from this wrongful conviction. So in California, they immediately passed this law where the statute of limitations for, I guess, rape is now, I think, like 10 or 12 years or something like that. Or it's just, you look at everything that's coming from it. So someone could say that you allegedly sexually assaulted them or raped them. We're in 2021. Back in 2011.
And how are you going to defend that? You just really have to. You're kind of in a tight spot because even if you didn't, now you have to defend something with very little evidence. Maybe the best evidence that you have is that you hope that her story or his story, whoever is bringing these allegations, that there's contradictions. You hope that maybe the jury can see that this person's not credible. And overall, so you have to realize that celebrities and people that are very visible, people say a lot of things about them. Right? People say things about all these people all the time. There's whole magazines devoted and tabloids devoted to saying lies about these people. So that also factors into the jury's thinking that, okay, well, this person's famous. So the fame, to an extent, a double-edged sword. It protects you, but then it really opens you up and makes you very visible.
So that happened, and then, like you said, his reputation. But from what I'm seeing from the commentary, they still want to hold trial on TV instead of in a courtroom.
Well, you have to remember that that's just how it is. That's how the media is. It was like that with the OJ trial. If you actually look at the facts of the OJ trial, for example, you'll see that there was no way that he killed anybody. There was just no evidence. There was no motive, and the evidence that was there really contradicted the narrative of the other side. But if you just watched it on TV, you still have things saying, well, if OJ did it, here's how he did it, and here's how he got away. So there's a OJ did it, quote unquote, industry where people allude to it till this day, and they don't really look at just the hard facts about the actual case. And that's just how it is. Once your name is dragged through the mud in the media, you're guilty in people's minds. And if it goes to trial, and then you just have to rely on facts, and because on TV, you're not cross-examined. If I have a network that gives me leeway to talk, let's say to talk about you, Dynast, and I just get up there and nobody challenges any of my assertions, and I just say a bunch of things about you, and then that's the end of the segment. There was no challenge, there was no rebuttal, there was no cross-examination. It was just somebody who spoke in a narrative and probably introduced certain statements and things that might not be able to be introduced in actual because of the rules of evidence. So there's a lot of what happens in the courtroom just alone. What can even come into a courtroom in regards to the rules of evidence? So, for example, hearsay. There's no objections in the media. You can just give a narrative. You can really say whatever you want, and that's it. So now the viewer is just going to watch and say, oh my goodness, this person is a terrible person. But then when they come into the courtroom and you cross-examine the person, and then the jury might see, well, this person isn't as credible as I had initially thought when I initially heard them give their version of the events. It kind of fell apart with a few very tactically placed questions.
All right. Guys, link is in the chat room. If you want to call in, I'll put the link in the chat room. Let me bring African Wahala back on real quick. But again, link is in the chat room. If you want to call in, click on that link. We'll take a couple callers. African Wahala, go ahead.
Hey, African Wahala, how's everything?
You got to mute yourself.
African Wahala, you're on mute.
You got to mute yourself, African Wahala.
Oh,
all right, you're unmuted, African Wahala. Go ahead. All right, African Wahala, this is you this time. So, guys, we were having technical difficulties on Monday. I don't know what was going on. So Tuesday morning, I checked my email, and I get a message from StreamYard saying that from these hours, we were having connection issues with our cloud service or something. And I said, okay. I know I'm not crazy. African Wahala. We can't hear you, bro.
Yes, sir.
We can barely hear you.
Oh, yes. Okay. Is it better now?
Go ahead.
Okay. Yeah, sorry, I can't show my face right now because I'm not in the right place.
All right.
Yeah, thank you for having me, man. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to, have a conversation with the extremely intellectual Ebube Okoli. Mm-hmm. Thank you, Dynast Amir, for having a platform where, you're always breaking down African issues, and it's important. So the last conversation we were having was, are we putting too much pressure on Nigerian politicians?
Well, it was, are we too harsh on our leaders? Whether they be royal fathers.
But after a while, we shifted the subject today. Let's not spend too much time on that. And like we were talking about Nnamdi and Bill Cosby.
Okay. You know what? I'm not gonna be too controversial, but I'm gonna say the truth as much as possible because the truth needs to be heard, right?
Okay.
Yeah. So the truth is, we're not putting enough pressure on our leaders, on our politicians. And I have many reasons why. So, first and foremost, when you have politicians that make promises to improve your quality of life, and once they get into power, they do nothing in their promises. And whenever you go out there to protest, to ask for them to do the right thing, they use brute force, using the police, the military to shoot you down for protesting. Then I feel like we actually need to change our strategy. Um, the arrest of Nnamdi Kanu was a big blow to every freedom fighting person of Nigerian extraction, because whether we like it or not, whether we have different solutions to these problems that we're facing, we all just want a better life. That's it. Some people are asking for the complete disintegration of Nigeria. Some are asking for the overhauling of the constitution. Some are asking for, all types of things that people are asking for. Restructuring, like Ebube Okoli was saying the other day, political restructuring, economic restructuring. We want any kind of restructuring. Whatever it takes that would improve the lives of the people, that is all that matters. Because I'll tell you what, man, right from the time of slavery, colonization, neo-colonization till this day, it has always gotten worse for the common Nigerian. And I also understand that we've been divided using ethnicity, religion, political affiliation, and stuff like that. The real division is between the political elites and their affiliates and the rest of the people that they consider as masses. So it's actually two groups of people: the political elites that make up about 2% of the population, and the rest of the people. So that is the real division. And the rest of the people, we need to come together, continue putting more pressure on these political elites until they bulge, until we have a better country where we can have a better life. And I'm going to close this up with this final thought. One of the reasons why so-called Black people are not respected all around the world is because on the continent of Africa, we are not able to be self-sustainable. We are not able to do things for ourselves without relying on Europe, America, Asia, on everybody else, until we get to that point where we are self-sustainable, where the continent of Africa is built by Africans. Then we're never going to be respected. We're going to remain at the bottom of the food chain where we currently are. That's why we're not putting enough pressure on these politicians.
All right. You want to respond to that, Ebube? Uh-oh. Oh, come on, Ebube. Okay, you back. All right, I was about to say, man, not again.
Yeah, not again. It seems like it.
Man, Ebube's freezing up on us, man. Not again. Goodness. Man, Ebube, you're freezing up on us, man. Let's see here.
Hello?
Yeah. We lost Ebube. He fell off. Guys, you want to call in and add to the conversation? Link is in the chat. We get a link in the chat room. Everyone, go ahead and call in and add to the conversation. Now here goes Ebube's back now. All right, go ahead, Ebube.
All right, so how's it now? You guys can hear me?
Yeah, we hear you.
Perfect. After a while, I did have a question for you.
Hold on, let me mute. I'll go ahead, Ebube.
All right, I did have a question for you, and this is an interesting point raised by somebody else. Now, one of the things that I see as part of the problem in Nigeria in regards to leadership is that we oftentimes, we don't do the things we need to do as those who follow the leaders. So, for example, the culture that we have in Nigeria is one where, to an extent, that we have bribery and we allow corruption, and that goes from the family level all the way up to the top. So it starts from the bottom and goes to the top. So now let's say, for example, there was a restructuring and we gave more power to, for example, states or even regions. Now, let's say the same people that have been blamed for ruining things at the state level, some of the governors and people of that, like that. It seems African Wahala dropped off. Danish, you're still with me though, right?
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay, well, I'll just continue the point. But essentially what some people are saying is that unless we address the culture, so for example, the culture of corruption, or the culture of giving and taking bribes, or the culture of inflating contracts, or the culture of generally stealing from ourselves. Certain people who get in certain positions look to see how those positions can enrich them as opposed to looking how those positions can actually benefit the nation. So if you have people who are engaging in that type of behavior, now, let's say we restructure and we give more power to those same people. What are they going to do differently that they're not already doing right now is the real question. So we have to look at it and say, okay, yeah, we do have leaders, but our leaders aren't saviors. They're merely people who have a job and a duty to the public. However, we as people have a duty to the nation in and of ourselves to go ahead and do the things on our individual levels that are going to move the nation forward. And if we're not all doing that, then we can't complain that the leader isn't moving everything forward, because the leader in and of himself or herself can't move the nation forward just by themselves. It takes the entire nation getting on board with a well-articulated vision. And part of the problem that we have in Africa is that we don't have nations that were coalesced or built around one particular vision. We have multicultural nations. And whenever you have a nation that has more than one culture, typically what happens is one culture tries to be supreme over the other cultures. So rather than moving the nations forward, what typically happens in nations with many different cultures is that there's a contest to see which culture is going to be supreme over which other culture. And in the process, national development is put to the back because no culture wants to come second to any other culture. And so we have that issue. And so that's a major issue that we as Africans have to focus on and fix, because at the end of the day, we have multicultural nations. Almost every African nation is multicultural except Somalia. And even in Somalia, they have clans, but they have one similar culture. And if they can get things right, then they can move past and get directly into national development. But many other nations have that issue. And so that's what we're dealing with now. So we need to come up with systems to address that, to ensure the development of the nation. We have one core ideology and vision that unites us as a nation.
Brandon, go ahead.
Hey, Brandon,
oh, you're not done? Okay, go ahead.
Oh, no, I was saying, Brandon, what's up? I was saying, what's going on?
Hey, can you guys hear me?
You're kind of low.
Can you guys hear me?
That's better. Go ahead. You're low, but go ahead.
Right.
I got it cranked up all the way to 100. Go ahead.
So we have a problem with staying on topic, but that's okay, because you said we don't want to go off topic, and the dude still went off topic. So I'm just going to say...
Brandon, let me put it in context. So on Monday, we were having a discussion. What was the original topic?
No, I watched it.
Yeah. So that's why I told him. That's why I said keep it short, because,
but
go ahead, Brandon. Go ahead.
It's an irrelevant conversation with Nigeria, because it's a lose-lose situation. I mean, it's like, one thing Africa does not need is more tiny countries that cannot sustain themselves economically.
Also, Brandon, let me stop you right there. So what you're saying is, if Nigeria was to separate, it'll be like we'll have like another Togo and Benin Republic.
Man, it's gonna be an economic disaster. But the point is, it's easy to break shit apart. That's why Black people like to do that, because we love taking the easy way. You got a bunch of Nigerians all over the world who don't even want to be in Nigeria, talking shit about what Nigeria needs to do. Why don't the best and the brightest stop leaving Nigeria and go back over there and fix the Nigeria? You don't see the best doctors and lawyers in America leaving to other countries to go live there and marry white women and just do all types of stuff that's counterproductive. Everybody got opinion, but nobody wants to be on the ground. So, like African Americans, everybody else, we shouldn't even comment about it. And we really shouldn't entertain the ideas of anyone who doesn't want to physically be in that place. It's irrelevant. go talk about how the southern region or whatever of Nigeria, which really don't got a lot of like resources, is going to sustain itself economically once
Brandon, I got to jump in right there just really quickly. It's actually the reverse. The South actually has the gas and the oil, and the gas essentially is the mainstay of the economy. And then in regards to the economic,
I got that wrong.
and then in regards to
You're right.
in regards to the economic center of Nigeria, Lagos actually, the economy of Lagos is actually bigger than some African countries.
Exactly.
So the South is very viable.
Ebube, no African country with their current sizes, other than the ones that the Arabs own, can really sustain itself economically 100%, especially with the populations they have.
I wouldn't say that's true. I wouldn't say that's true.
Name
All right.
one.
So for example, you look at Kenya. Kenya has tourism. Tourism
Kenya is taking all types of loans. I'm in Kenya right now.
Well, here's the thing about the loans. But here's the thing about the loans. The loans are to move ahead. Typically, what African nations do with the loans is that they use them to do things that are outside of their normal day-to-day budget. The loans are actually extra. They're not using the loans to sustain themselves. They're using the loans to build infrastructure to kind of skip ahead a little bit in regards to industrialization. But the nations are self-sustainable. They're not taking loans to survive. They're essentially taking loans to build infrastructure to get ahead. So it's like, so for example, let's say if you wanted to finance a rail system by yourself, let's say it might take you 20 years. But if you partner with China, you can build the rail system in 5 years, and then you spend the next 20 years paying it off. So you get the infrastructure now, and you essentially pay for it at the rate that you would have normally paid for it. So the loans aren't to sustain. Go ahead.
Okay, for one, Kenya is in the Commonwealth with Britain. There's all types of money Britain gives Kenya just to sustain basic services. It's like welfare. These countries are too small to sustain themselves alone. That's why.
Well, if you look at the Francophone nations, it's actually the opposite. They're actually propping up.
Let me finish.
Go ahead.
If the economically, you can't say we could support ourselves when you have to depend on another country, right? Especially when you have so much corruption. So what I'm saying is, you're going to take one country that has problem, that's doing okay. They're kind of moving ahead. You're going to split that to a bunch of little countries, and then it's going to create more problems. Like, if Nigeria is the giant of Africa, why would you want to then break that up, right? Just to say, well, we want our own. Everybody thinks they could do better on their own. That's the same thing with ADOS in the United States. We want a unique identification from the rest of Black people all over the world, which is fine. We got that. But if you really took ADOS out of America and sat them on an island, you know that it would go really extremely bad before it started to do okay. Same thing with Nigeria, because I think there's a lot of issues that we're irresponsibly just refusing to address. But I don't want to really get on that too much.
Yeah, now, Brandon, you can't. Hey, Brandon, you came on saying that we was off topic, and you completely went off topic.
Right, because
it's good though.
Like, Nigeria shouldn't split up. Stay together, work out your problems. If they do go to war, it'll be just like the American Civil War. Unless you got an army that's about to fight to succeed, just shut up and go vote. Go do what you got to do. But the point is, Bill Cosby is free. That's more important than anything going on in Nigeria right now, because until all those Nigerians who talking about it go back to Nigeria, they're not serious about changing. But the point is, this guy got convicted for giving a chick a Benadryl. We should talk about how everybody cared more about getting money on reparations than they telling people to stay in the United States. United States is the best. But all these little dirty little secrets we want to sweep under the rug. Why would we encourage our people to stay in a place where at any time you can be thrown in jail for something that you didn't even do, really? Anybody can come 50 years later, he raped me, if you're a black man, and you go to jail. Nobody wants to address that. ADOS, FBA, we don't want to address that. We want to shift our focus onto what's going on in Africa. They don't like us, all this type of stuff. Bill Cosby was the champion of ADOS, and they let him get straight railroaded with zero pushback. And now they telling us, oh, the Pan-Africanists, you guys are wrong. You guys know what you're talking about. Africans don't like you, this and that. Everyone's powerless, right? Yet all the powerless people, they want to split up. That's what they want to do. They're strength in numbers, but we're totally focused on splitting up while we're getting screwed over. We're trying to figure out a way to make people believe that even though we're getting screwed over everywhere we are, breaking up is the solution. We can't even defend people like Cosby, who did us so much for the black community in America. But we're talking about, what we really need to do is split up, because somehow that's going to deliver us to where we want to be. And it makes no sense.
Well, I will touch on a few points. I did a documentary called France and Africa. I'd say check that out. But I'd say if not all African nations are self-sustainable. In fact, some African nations are even propping up their former colonizers. So if you look at Portugal and their relationship with Angola, it might just shock you that Angola is essentially doing things for Portugal that Portugal can't do for itself. So we don't want to have this narrative that African nations are just dependent, non-self-sustainable. They really are. The problem that we have in African nations is that a lot of these nations have a system that's not really conducive to development. Part of that problem is that the nations weren't built around a vision or a common identity that we can all agree on, therefore we can move forward. So now when I say culture, I don't mean like a common language or anything like that. I mean an overall outlook. Culture is something you do as every day, right? So culturally, Canadians and Americans are very similar. Very similar. A Canadian who comes and lives in America, you may never know that that person is a Canadian unless they tell you, or unless they have this strange, hardcore Canadian accent. Outside of that, you won't know, because Canada and America have similar cultures. So if a Canadian and an American wanted to solve a problem, they would think similar in regards to how to solve that problem, because they have a similar culture. So now if you take a Canadian and you take a Vietnamese, or just a Chinese, that's from China, they might have very different perceptions on how to go about solving problems. So now when you mix these two people in a nation, and these nations have a lot of problems that need to be solved, you might have one culture say, well, I want to make sure my people are the ones solving all the problems, so that my culture, the way that my people see it, is going to be the dominant one. So we spend time fighting that and saying, okay, I want my culture to be the dominant culture. I want my culture in power, as opposed to saying, okay, what are the cultural similarities that we have that we can agree on to move forward? So now sometimes most post-colonial conflict in Africa has been that, right? Between this group and that group, this group wanting this, or this group being in power, saying now that you're in power, my people are being oppressed, or now my people are in power and your people don't like it, so now they want to leave, or my people come to power and we felt that we've been denied power for so long that now we're going to wield it over others, and we're going to essentially create a system that disadvantages other people within that same nation. So when that occurs, people typically say, well, I want self-determination. I don't want to be ruled by your group if your group isn't going to rule properly. And so when that ideology takes root, you have to fight it at an ideological level. You have to, it's like, for example, Wyoming. There's nobody in Wyoming who's clamoring to leave the United States. There's nobody in Wyoming saying we want self-determination, because just saying those words sound funny, because from an ideological perspective, there's just so many more logical benefits that come with being a part of the United States. It's very rare that you hear states or regions talking about leaving the Federation of the United States. Well, you know, Texas is it's a weird place anyway. But it's they're still in the United States, right? There's nobody that will give their life. Well, there's not enough people that would give their life to see that Texas becomes a country of its own. In fact, if there was a referendum, most Texans, upwards of 95%, would probably vote to stay in the United States. But it's not so in certain regions in Africa. Certain regions in Africa, they say that the system has so marginalized us that we're better off how we were 1,000 years ago, being this regional entity or this nation state or this or that or Ambazonia or Azawad or whatever nation, because they say that the European powers put them together in a way that they didn't initially agree to. So when you have all these factors present, you have to use really unique problem-solving solutions when you deal with African problems. Because Africa is one place that you can't really rule by force, because if you only know how to use the gun or the sword, you will never be able to cut through an ideology. So if you're fighting an ideology with the sword, you're going to lose every single time.
Hey, can I ask a question? Can I ask you a question, Dynast?
Go ahead.
Okay. When are we going to talk about the elephant in the room?
What's that?
When are we going to talk about how ADOS, FBA turned on Bill Cosby based on white-owned media? And now that he's been exonerated, we're acting like, yo, we always knew he was guilty.
No. I'm gonna say this. I think it's kind of divided. You have a lot of ADO, whatever you want to call it, who support Bill Cosby, and then you have a lot. Go ahead, but I think it's like divided. I think
the people who turned on it.
Right. What do you mean? Yeah. I mean, you have people who turned on him. You have people who knew that he got arrested. He was convicted on trumped up charges.
But when are we going to address that? How we are so easily split when it comes to any accusation, when you know and I know that we, majority of the time, don't even know the facts about the situation.
Well, like, Brandon, let me chime in. Let me chime in there. And this is a function of culture. And once again, culture is just what you do every day. Now, there are certain cultures where if they see another culture demeaning someone within their culture, they're not going to openly, publicly demean that person from the other person from the other culture. In fact, they'll go out of their way to say, well, let's be objective and let's see things from both sides. Right. And so that's a cultural aspect. So that's something that needs to be imbibed into the culture, that if another culture accuses someone within my culture, well, I'm going to look at it skeptically, and I'm not going to go along with it just off the rip. I'm going to dig deep and look at the evidence and come to my own conclusion before I convict somebody within my culture based on the accusations of somebody from another culture.
Ebube, but where was the campaign for his innocence? We could get in the streets in March.
Well, I'm gonna tell you this: the last time, Brandon, the last time we came together in a case similar to this was O.J. Simpson. That's the last time. Go ahead. Yeah,
we marched for George Floyd, but we can't march for somebody who's innocent getting screwed over. We didn't march for O.J. We didn't march. We don't march for the people who really help us. Like George Floyd, it was bad. But George Floyd really wasn't doing shit for our people. Why did the guy who did so much get so little effort when it came to us proving his innocence?
I can tell you why. I can tell you why right now, because the media didn't cue us to go march for him like that, like they do with everybody else.
So essentially, we're being dominated and programmed and controlled by white supremacy. Yeah. Because the white media is able to make us either stay at home or go out in the street based on what they think is worthy. That has to be addressed. Why is it
What's
that
the solution? What's the solution to address that?
People,
Hey, Brandon, what's this? That's a very serious point you just brought up. What's the solution to address that? Or what would be your solution, I should say?
the solution to address it is the first way to solve a problem is to admit you have a problem. As I'm saying what I'm saying, which Dynas, you know what I'm saying is true. Ebube, you know what I'm saying is true. You got people in the audience talking about that's not fully true. This is the facts. If you argue against this, you're retarded. Bill Cosby got no marches supporting his innocence. George Floyd got a bunch of marches supporting the fact that, he was mistreated by cops. Bill Cosby was mistreated too. He just didn't die, and CNN didn't tell you to go in the street and march for him.
So what would you suggest? Like, if you had a magic wand and you say, you know what, I'm gonna put this into Black culture, that anytime this happens, here's the actual response.
We need our own media outlets, but real ones, not just the garbage on YouTube that claims to be the Black media. We need people who really can assess situations rationally and give real direction.
I mean, aren't you one of them? Hey, Brandon, aren't you one of them?
Yeah, but I don't have the biggest audience.
So now what we have to work on is getting you a bigger audience. So that's actually the solution, is getting your message out there to more people.
The reality is, Ebube, we have to admit the truth. Our people don't want nothing more than to be white controlled citizens. They don't give a damn about what's right or wrong. They care about what white people tell them to do. If white people told Black people, Brandon, Pan-Africanism strikes back is a problem, and you guys need to get rid of him, 90% of these people would turn on me in an instant. Same with you, Dynas. Same with any other Black person. We are not safe in our own diaspora because another group of people can turn our people on us at any time. Any time. They turned our people on Bill Cosby. They turned our people on R. Kelly. Not saying he's guilty or innocent, but they are able to flip a switch and make you public enemy number one among your own people. And I feel like ADOS, FBA, me being a part of that, we need to be accountable for that. You know what I'm saying?
Well, let me ask you a question. Hey, Brandon, let me ask you a question. Who controls the politics within the Black community? Meaning
Joe Biden.
White people.
White people.
All right, so if that is the case, that should be solved first then, because if the political dictates and whims of Black America is being controlled by another culture, well, then that's an issue. And so people like you, people like Dynas, people like me have to put ourselves in a position to where the narrative can be spoken and truly put in perspective as it should be. Now, you made a statement that the audience, not enough people are there, but that's what it takes. You have to build that audience with consistency. Like I said earlier, an ideology can't be destroyed. If it's a well-articulated ideology, can never be destroyed, because once people hear it, if it's well-articulated and it's based on logic, people are going to understand the logic, even if they don't fully understand the ideology. So once they see the logic in what you're saying, they take it on.
Ebube, logic has no impact on Black people. Look at the comments right now.
Facts.
Cosby has been.
Why do you say that? That's an extreme statement, though. I'd like you to understand.
Listen. Explain this to me. Cosby has been exonerated. We realize that he got screwed over. Look in the comments. People still talking about Cosby was raping women and he deserves to be in jail. We are double-minded. You could put the facts right in front of our damn face. We're still gonna try to double down on what the white man said. Cosby is innocent for all intents and purposes, according to law. They're still in the comments talking about it wasn't as clear as this and that, and Cosby was raped, and he was nothing more than this and that. We hate our own people. It's jealousy. It's envy. It's just like white man say the guilty, nigga guilty. Even if the white man say innocent, later, we're still gonna look at him as being guilty. Our people are broken in that way, and we can't fix the problem until we acknowledge the problem. But what we want to say is, all we really need is a check for a couple $1,000s. We need reparations.
But but Rand, I'm gonna stop you right there. We don't even want that. This past election, the only objective was to get rid of the orange man. When people like me and you were saying, how about you ask for some tangibles, for something? No. That's always been the story.
They want you, Dynast, they want you to be ADOS, right? They get mad at us when we talk about Pan-Africans. No, you're ADOS. Why the hell would I want to be ADOS when ADOS will turn on me in an instant? That's like them saying, bro, you should be a Crip. But I know that these Crips kill Crips.
Kill each other.
They want to turn on you at any second. We look, if you're talking about ADOS, if you're talking about FBA, and you didn't march in the street for Cosby, just shut up. If you didn't march in the street for OJ, just shut up. If you didn't go take your money and put it in a pot and go hire lawyers to defend your people when we were getting screwed over, just shut up. You don't want to unite on nothing more than the word of the white man on CNN and MSNBC. The white man is the only one who can rally you together. That's why the leadership of your movement are people who are enslaved to white folks. That's it. ADOS, our leadership supposedly is a lady who is married to a white woman. You understand what I'm saying? Everybody giving us instructions is married and sleeping with the enemy. And y'all telling me that that's better and more of a better solution for our people than what people like me and Dynast and Ebube talk about? You sound like a damn fool. That's like me telling a rat or a mouse, the best thing for you to do is go in there with that rattlesnake, because it's better able to make decisions for you. We're hypocritical. We don't got no type of unified mindset. But then we want to try to criticize other people and criticize people who think rationally. Go defend Bill Cosby. Bill Cosby should have never set foot in jail because there wasn't evidence enough to convict him. And even Ebube would say that. How did he get put in jail when ADOS supposedly is the most powerful black group on the planet? It doesn't make sense.
Hey, what we'll do, Ebube, go ahead and respond, and we're gonna go ahead and close out. I gotta get Master ready for bed, all that good stuff. So Ebube, go ahead and respond, and we'll go ahead and close out.
All right. So basically, Bernie, you raised a lot of points. I don't know if I'll be able to hit them all, but you raised a lot of good points. What I'll say is this, but I always like to be solutions oriented. What I would say the issue is, once again, is it goes back to culture, right? So now we in Africa have a certain issue with culture, and the African American also has a certain issue with culture, right? The African Americans' issue with culture is that African Americans, to an extent, have had a lot of external influence on their culture that deprive the culture of some of the better aspects of the culture, right? So that togetherness, right? So when you see another black man, as opposed to saying, oh, thank God that black man's here, that's another one of us, sometimes there's an animosity that was artificially put there into the culture that should be removed. So there's certain aspects of Black American culture that can be fixed with affirmative thinking and saying, okay, we need to fix this part of the culture because it's not good. I need to fix this within myself. And when I see it in others, I need to call that out because that needs to be removed from the culture. In Africa, we also have a cultural issue because many of our nations are multicultural. So when you go to Nigeria, you really can't say what the Nigerian culture is, right? You have Yoruba people, you have Igbo people, you have Afiki, Bibio, Hausa, Fulani, Tiv, etc., etc. And that would be the cultural aspects of Nigeria. But we as Nigeria haven't come up with a cultural identity of what makes us a Nigerian? Under what basis do we come together? Is it economics? Are we looking to have the biggest economy in Africa? Is that our culture as Nigerians? If so, are we doing everything in our power to have a buoyant and strong economy? Right? So it all goes back to culture. Are we allowing a culture of corruption to thrive that's actually taking us backwards as a people? Is that what we're going to call the Nigerian culture? So culture is just what you do every day, what you eat, what you think, how you behave as a group of people being examined. That is what your culture would be. So what I see are there similarities between Africans in that we have certain aspects of ourselves culturally that we need to fix in order to make the nations function properly. And African Americans have the same thing, where you just brought up a good point, where if another culture attacks this culture will sometimes go with the other culture and attacking someone within their very own culture. There's certain cultures where even if they know the person's guilty, they're not going to let you say it if you're coming from another culture. They're going to somewhat defend that person and say, well, let's wait till all the evidence comes out. They're not going to outright be the one at the forefront saying, get this person. They're going to just fall back. And if they know that the person in their group did it, they're just going to be quiet. And it is what it is. But they themselves aren't going to come out and condemn someone within their own culture. And that's something that's good to imbibe as a culture, because it creates a defense mechanism. So people know if I attack someone from this culture, I'm going to deal with the entire backlash from the entire culture. And that's a way that you protect yourself, especially if you're a minority, because they know that I'm not just attacking this one person. I'm attacking the entire culture, because this culture is going to work together to make sure that if this person's guilty, that they go through the proper channels to prove that this person's guilty before we say anything about that person.
Brandon.
Hey, yeah, no, you're 100% right. Like, how are we? The discussions we're trying to have, we're not even at the point where we can have them. We talking about reparations. We talk about splitting up.
They're not even talking about reparations, Brandon. Like, I don't know what the hell they're talking about, bro. Like,
yeah, we have no look. The only way black people do better under dictatorship than democracy. That's facts all over the globe. Until our people are forced to be on code, they will never be on code. Every great nation, China, United States, any country you can think of, to get over the hump of division, you literally had to violently force them to come together. That's what the American Civil War was. That's what the Cultural Revolution was in China. You know what I'm saying? That was saying, if you don't get on code, you're going to get killed. We're going to need that kind of change or shift among our people to make a change. I used to hang out with some dudes who were like some pretty tough black dudes in California. And there was this guy. Most people know him, but I'm not going to say his name. But he had a bunch of black men following him. And they were doing like military drills. I'm telling you, these guys ran up in a police station one time, fighting the police. I kid you not. And I asked this guy, I said, how do you get these guys to follow you like that? Like, abandon all like self-interest and just follow you. He said, the key to making men follow you is to make them more scared of what you can do to them than what the enemy can do to them. And I believe, and the more I get older, the more I believe that. Because it's like, think about it. If a soldier in the United States Army does treason, what's going to happen to him? He's going to jail for life. Back in the day, he would be executed. So that gave him the incentive to stay loyal to his side. We have no way of holding our people accountable for anything, you know, like exclusively. So our people can hopscotch back and forth from the enemy side to our side. Our people, like how our people did Umar Johnson and people like that. I don't give a damn if you do think he's stemming. There's no way people should be able to do what they did to Dr. Umar and just get away with it. Calling the FBI, taking him to court, stuff like that. If we're going to handle him, let's handle him in-house. These dudes ran to the white man to handle the black man. And we felt like that was totally fine. We got to figure out a way to hold our people accountable.
Hey, Brandon,
should be punished.
Brandon, we're going to close out. Where can how can people reach you and subscribe?
My name is the one on the tag. Pan-Africanism Strikes Back. Just go to my channel.
Yes, sir.
And I'm not saying what I'm saying to be like cruel, but the way I'm looking at it, based on our actions versus the bullshit we say, is gonna have to get to that point before we actually get on code.
All right, for sure. Ebube, go ahead and close it out, brother.
Oh man, it's always been a very interesting discussion. Thank you, African Wildlife, for calling in. Of course, Brandon, mute yourself. I think that echoes coming in. Okay. Thank you. Your point of view, likewise, is always very refreshing. And Dynast, like you said, this is the third day into the week. Let's see what the remaining 4 days have left for us, and we'll proceed from there. But yeah, so if you haven't been to Up Close and Center, make sure you go to Up Close and Center after this broadcast and subscribe. The logo looks like this: black logo, white lettering. Also, too, if you're here and you enjoyed watching this content, make sure you hit that like button before you get out, and make sure you subscribe.
Yes, sir. Everyone, thank you so much for joining. Like, share, subscribe. Until next time, family. Dynast the Mirror Search for Guru. Peace.